Hey everyone, it's Emma from Aeobhel here. Today I'm showing the process for my camel painting, which is a part of the series I did for the illustrated parenting book, A Really Great Mum. I used Winsor & Newton watercolours, prismacolour pencil and Holbein acryla gouache throughout, and I'm painting on some heavy-duty 640g watercolour paper. This painting is an interesting one for me to reflect on. I was very excited by the premise of the painting and I thought that it had a lot of promise. Then, as the painting progressed, there were a few moments where my skill and execution didn't line up with my expectations, which led me to, in my own opinion, overwork some aspects of the painting in pursuit of a better outcome. When I wasn't happy with those elements, which I deemed were overworked, I then underworked other areas for fear of overdoing it again. When all was said and done, I reached a point where, yes, I was satisfied with the artwork, but then left to answer the question, is this really good enough, or should I start over and try again? I ultimately decided to stick with this original version, and without sharing my reservations or fishing for compliments from anyone, 2 people independently told me that this was one of their favourite paintings from the whole series. So there you go, an important reminder that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and we are often our own harshest critics. For reference, I was mostly happy with my work up until this point here. The sand dunes had dried a little bit lighter than I would have liked, and I would have preferred for them to be a bit more vibrant to reflect the bright orange sunset that is supposed to be setting just out of frame. What deterred me from going back over the dunes to increase their vibrancy was the fact that I struggled so much with shading the camels. Originally, I tried to do some wet-on-wet painting to capture all of the highlights and shadows, but then made a pivot to wet on dry, which led to some harsher lines which I wasn't totally happy with. In an effort to blend this out, I went over the camels in coloured pencil, and although this improved the overall painting, it still just didn't align with what I had hoped for the camels. To the unsuspecting viewer, they would have no idea of the trials and tribulations I experienced whilst painting this. And that's why I have to be so careful about speaking negatively about my own work publicly. Where I am reminded of stress and mistakes and many rounds of work, the viewer is not burdened by these feelings and can form a much more objective opinion about whether or not they like the painting. And I don't expect that everyone will like this piece, but the fact that 2 people picked the camels as their favourite painting from an entire series goes to show that, individual taste does vary greatly. The silver lining to this piece, aside from the fact that it's now published in a parenting book and hopefully making many mothers and babies around Australia smile, is the fact that I took away a couple of lessons. The first, which I already touched on, is learning to speak constructively about my work without being negative. I think honest reflections are vital for improvement, but I've had to learn to only share my true feelings or negative thoughts with my closest inner circle. Other people who may see your artwork don't need to know how displeased you may be, and unless they're asking specific questions about the elements of the painting you struggled with, which in my experience doesn't really happen, then it's better to keep those thoughts to your most trusted advisors and don't taint other people's perceptions of your work. The next lesson that I haven't mastered yet, but this experience helped inform, is finding the right balance between wet on wet and wet on dry, and improving my understanding of which techniques are best employed in different circumstances. I'm excited to keep practicing this skill and one day get to a level where I can trust my judgment, trust the process, and get results that more closely align with the vision that I have for a painting. Anyway, the video is wrapping up now, so I'll leave it here. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed and tell me what you think about these topics I've discussed in the comment section below. I have plenty more videos from this series up on my channel, so go check them out. Until next time, bye!